Hello Investigate followers, this is Farah Muntasser, the editor-in-chief. I'm happy to announce the launch of our latest Investigate Voice of Architecture, and on that occasion we sit with Group CEO Mr. Emad El Nattar. He is the CEO of Namaa Development and Real Estate Investment, among other 13 companies. Emad, if you could just start by telling us how do you see this pandemic affecting architecture النهارده?
That's the classic question of all interviews. See, the pandemic has affected all companies in various ways. It's not really only affecting architecture. It's not affecting a single business per se. The pandemic has affected the economic structure of the world globally. We as Namaa, we own and manage about 100,000 square meters of office space, and we manage them full-fledged. And our customers are, for the most part, 90% of them are multinationals, and we have seen a massive move in the multinational company pool of reducing the sizes of leased out spaces to meet the current economic crisis that's meeting the entire world. We used to see multinationals taking up to 4,000, 5,000 square meters and whole buildings in east and west of Cairo. Now we're seeing a massive shrink in these numbers that are going down as much as 500 square meters per company. And the main problem is not the pandemic, it's the effect of the pandemic, which is the economical crisis that is on the table, and it's a big challenge for every CEO, chairman across the globe. We're seeing that on our side, our end, as a property management company. We're seeing it in mainly the behavior of how multinationals are going to meet office space needs in the future, and the amount of employees that they intend to have per office space. And we can talk in more detail about this in the coming in the rest of the interview, inshallah.
طيب هو given ان اللايف ستايل اتغير دلوقتي احنا we are faced up ان كلنا we are changing our lifestyle and we're changing the way we use the way we work. فhow do you see النهارده when it comes to architecture, how does it affect its design? Are you more into designing offices within the house, ولا we're sticking to offices in an administrative complex, or retail complex, or commercial complex? And how do these sizes change? انت قلت ان انت بتشوفوا الكاباسيتي بتاعت الامبلويز النهارده in workspace. So شايفها is it shrinking ولا شايف ان هيبقى الناس maybe for a developer هل هيبقى ان هو selling out those spaces ولا renting them out ولا هيبقى فيه more of a co-working space between several companies?
Well, see, the idea of working from home has always been on the table, and it's always been a discussion between employees and management. And we've been hearing it for maybe 5 to 6 years for now. The management of companies always were afraid of the productivity of the employees when they work from home. Nobody ever disagreed over that it's better logistics, it's better time management and everything. The problem is companies always look for the output of their employees. And they always felt that employees, when they were together, close to each other, they could manage business better than when they were segregated. Taban, with technology advancing to where it is today, the ability to communicate with one another over a 10-inch screen from anywhere in the world, data has become fairly fast now, so there's no lags, there's no problems. We can transfer documents back and forth with each other. It's very convenient for the employee to work from home, Yet it was always very scary for the management to know if that will affect output or not. What happened with COVID-19 is that it became necessary for people to work from home. And suddenly this management that was always skeptical and afraid of the output actually had numbers on the table to talk with now. They could measure the productivity of their employees, and they were not accountable for it because COVID-19 was accountable for it. What we saw is that the actual productivity was not decreased. It was either the same or in some cases increased, because what we see in office spaces kill happiness a little bit. People design office spaces historically in boring white lights, cramped spaces, cubicles. People don't like to live like this. People like open air. They like to see daylight. They like to see sunlight. They like to be with their families in most cases. And if not with their families, they like to be with their friends. And this is why we saw this trend of co-working spaces rising from a company like WeWork in New York, and it became massive in size. They're managing 950,000 square meters, and that's as much as the office spaces in all of East and West Cairo for A-class office spaces. And this one single company with no assets, pretty much. Their owned assets are very minimal. The problem that happened with WeWork is a management issue, but it opened people's eyes to this co-working space idea. And it was rising. We saw several companies going towards co-working spaces, sales forces going towards co-working spaces, management going towards co-working spaces, and reducing their long-term lease sizes in office buildings. COVID-19 came and it created this bump in social distancing, because co-working spaces is built on the actual opposite of social distancing. That more people come together from different fields, from different backgrounds, startups with companies medium-sized or small-sized or large-sized, even consultants coming together in a shared space. And this communal idea was bringing people back from this segregation that we had from technology and business and everything, that we're always flying around the world and talking over screens and all of this. People wanted to get back and sit on a common table together. And COVID-19 put a little bit of a lag in this progress, but I think it's just for a while. It's not really going to stay forever. If you look at history and you study history, you can actually know what's going to happen in the future. We've had things worse than COVID-19. We've had the Spanish flu, and we've had several other pandemics, Shanghai flu, the Hong Kong flu, and they all came and they passed. Even World War I, World War II came and they passed. So everything passes at the end of the day, and people want to get back together and sit back together. So to answer your question, the problem or the change, the shift is not in architecture as much as it is in interior design. So the interior designers now are having challenges of how to bring people together while keeping them distant enough to be safe. So we're seeing a shift in that, and this shift is definitely affecting the space per person. We used to work with 8 to 12 square meters per person in an office space. Now it's massively increasing.
Okay. So given that you have Capital One and it's an administrative and commercial complex, could you tell us a little bit about, given that برضو change of behavior and change of lifestyle, could you tell us a bit how did you develop it from an architecture perspective around humans and the quality of life and the community method? Because, and I read a lot about community architecture. I'm not sure if it applies here or not, but the idea is to create a community to promote the project has become a trend recently in Egypt. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. And we've been studying our buildings, and for the past 5 years, we've been dealing with our building as a human. We've been trying to always relate our building to a human. So every part of our building has to interact some way with the person inside of it, whether this person is a visitor or whether this person is an employee in the building or is part of our management in the building. He needs to interact with each part of the building from the moment he walks into the parking lot, how he's met by the security, and the kind of feedback he gets, and how it takes him through the ramps and into the parking space and up through the elevator and into the building. Everything has to affect one of his five senses, and our mandate was to get our teams to affect somehow all the five senses, because when you meet someone, you get interaction in all your five senses. So when we're meeting now over the screen, the screen is killing a major sense, which is the sense of smell, the sense of touch. Okay, we have the sense of seeing. This is and hearing are the two we're working with right now. In an office building, you have to relate to the smell. Smells really hook with people's minds. When you smell something several times, and then you smell it in another country, you say, "Oh, this reminds me of this or so hotel, or that chair, that leather chair I had in the house, or whatever." People have a memory for smells. Hearing for songs you've heard as a child, you still sometimes it just runs into your mind when you're in the car and you're 45 years old later, and it's just ringing in your mind, and you have no idea why this happened. So people need to interact with all their five senses, and this is what we're doing. We designed a classic scent for our buildings, and we changed the scent so that every building gives a different impression, a different mood. We worked on the color schemes of our building, but we were a little bit limited because our buildings were already there. There's nothing you could do architecturally about it. You could do a little bit with interior design, but with Capital One, actually, we worked with a tremendous architect. I don't know if I can say her name or not, but she's a tremendous architect. She worked on several projects in the Middle East and across the world.
You can mention her name if you can mention her name.
Her name is Hazel Wong, and she's the most wonderful person I've met so far. Engineer for sure, and she has she's the person who listens the most to your briefs, because we as a company give a project brief, and the architect listens to it and digests what we want, and then comes up with the design. Before sitting with Hazel, we sat with a brand architect to actually revamp our brand in the market. And he's also one of the most intelligent and one of the most fun people to be around. Is Amir Fayo. I don't know if you guys heard of him, but he's a very famous name. And I had the pleasure of meeting him over this project, Capital One. He actually is the architect of that brand. And he did a few workshops with us, and he understood that we are really interested in humans. And he created for us something that really matches our DNA, which is the human story. Everything has to have a story behind it. And every place you walk into has to have a story that stays in your mind. And this is what we used in Capital One. Capital One tells the story of your workday. And it tells a happy story of your workday. From the moment you see the building, to the moment you walk into that lobby, that entrance, to the moment you walk into the atrium, to your office, you're always followed by happy colors, daylight, massive daylight, lounges, viewing rooms, meditation rooms, breakout places. You always see these images of people sitting around in massive spaces, and they're having a good time. And this affects your mood walking into your office and going out of your office. And it's unfortunate in most times, but very fortunate in our project, is that we all spend most of our time in our office with our colleagues. We spend actually very little time in comparison with our families. So that little time we spend with our families, we don't want to come back home carrying this heavy, bad mood of office spaces. And what we hope to do is we're hoping with Capital One that we give this human story, that we give this happy mood to people. We stand by our motto, to have a happy working day, and they go back home happy. And hopefully they get their families over, because our building has so many amenities We have 57,000 square meters of built up space, 7,000 of which are amenities. And when I say amenities, it's fun things to do. It's places to eat, places to have a coffee, places to buy something, places to work out, places to, we even have a jogging track on the roof with a fitness and wellness center. We have what you need to be happy, or how we believe to be happy, because this happy promise is always very shady. People are always promising happiness, and you can't promise happiness until you know the person. So we just trying to say, we're not promising happiness. We just think we know what people need in the office space because of our history there. So
Yeah.
hopefully, humans are not very different, and that's what makes most people happy. So we hope that's what makes all people happy.
Well, that's good. I hope you do bring happiness to the place. What do you have else in the pipeline?
We have a couple of projects in the pipeline. After we're done with Capital One, hopefully, because it's a large project. We're increasing our total managed space by around 95%. So it's sort of a gigantism move on our side. The new capital is a challenge. We really hope that people start moving there, and we start to see a certain footfall in the area, and this is hopefully in the plan, mandated by the government, hopefully, and we see every time you go to the new capital, you see new buildings and new projects coming up, and we hopefully, like they say in American movies, if you build it, they will come. So hopefully they will come. And at the same time, Namaa owns one of the largest land banks for large plots inside of Cairo, because most developers, they don't find large plots inside of Cairo, so they take in the West Side, in at Tagammu, in 6th of October, Zayed, these areas which are currently becoming the hub for suburbs now in Egypt. We actually own 4 plots. Each plot is 36,000 square meters and more. We're working on highest and best use at the moment with some of the consultants we have. Uh, Two of these plots will go into co-development with some of the best known names in residential, because they are in areas that don't fit offices so much. So we are looking for that at the moment, and we're on the table with some of the very well-known brands, brands in the residential. So you'll be hearing about this soon, hopefully. And for the expansion of our office space building, we're actually seeing a lot, and we have been seeing a lot of buildings that are uninhabited in the west and east side. It's people who had a surplus of cash and built that building, and it's just a skeleton. It's a concrete skeleton just standing there, and they don't know what to do with it, or they're in a cash crunch or whatever. And we're building that model of property management, and this is how we want to take Namaat's future. Is instead of buying building assets, buying or building assets, we want to go to already existing assets and provide them with our know-how of putting that asset on the map for office space. We have a team that's working now on the market. They're coming back with all available spaces that meet administrative requirements for multinationals and for large Egyptian corporations. We're starting to offer them a package of property management from our side. We do the entire line. We give them consultancy on how they should continue the design of the building if it's still a skeleton, if it's already done. We actually do the brokerage. We get the tenants. We do the tenant mix. We manage the contracts for them for 9 years. We manage the FM, the facility management for the building. So the landlord doesn't need to worry about the building at all. He just gets a P&L, and it just shows 3 4 lines: his revenue, his costs, and his profit at the bottom. And that is a simple way. We have a very nice. We're implementing an ERP SAP in the company now to provide our landlords with a up-to-date dashboard that shows all the statistics of their buildings. And we're doing an asset management service as well, in case they need to let go of the building, or put it into an acquisition with another company. an investment portfolio. So we're trying to move into in building a larger pool of office buildings under our management, and hopefully creating this small real estate investment trust and through that pool, hopefully.
Okay, I have to go back a little bit to real estate and ask you the known question. How do you see the development of the new cities, and do you want would Namaa want to expand outside of Egypt, of Cairo?
For sure, we studied these. We studied all the new cities actually when they first announced them, and we decided to go in the new capital in Cairo because office buildings in other governorates are still a thing that is not very familiar to people's minds. People always think of the regular residential apartment that you take for £5,000-6,000 and you use it as an office space. We're seeing that more as people start to see the new developments in new countries. We're building this special package for places such as Mansoura, for Dumnat, for Kafr Sheikh, for these governments that actually have the need that's starting now, and the education is happening because such an education is more of a government initiative rather than a private initiative. But it's happening because of all the developments that are happening. We definitely started with new capital, and hopefully we will migrate into the other developments once we start to see how the market is developing in the real estate. Because currently you really need to build what matches the market. The more you build towards it, the less of a hassle you need to do later on if the market shifts or the economy changes or so. We're actually running after this, and just so you know, we've built our 4 buildings at the moment, 5 buildings in management, 4 owned, and one of them is very famous. It's right in front of downtown mall. It's the Lafarge building, and another one is the one with the sign of MetLife and Palm Hills and Queer Mosque. That's building 75 is the large one, and our largest building is 44. It's on North 90 Road, and that's where GE is home for GE and Nestle. And we have another building, it's a smaller building also. And when we took these plots, Namaa was still a new development. There was only Atamaya Heights and maybe a few buildings. There was nothing else. And so we always hunt our strategy is always run into new cities because this is where the real challenge is, and this is where the real benefits are. So we definitely looking at Mansoura Garida and Dumnat Garida, and hopefully we will take a decision on that soon. So.
Good. Hopefully, inshallah. I'm going to wrap it up with 2 questions. The first is, what do you see in terms of architectural trends? What do you see nowadays happening? What's becoming trending when it comes to architecture today? And the second thing, the last question would be, what are the things that Namaa would try to avoid in its architecture? Would you be applying sustainability? Would you be applying, God knows what they do today to make their buildings and their projects more sustainable and more affordable and health-wise, I don't know what. So what do you see in that?
Right, let's just say that the 2 questions are actually one big fat question, but
Yes.
and the trend is sustainable architecture. That's a fact. Okay,
Yes.
whenever you go to any talk, to any round table, to anything where you have anyone from abroad, the table is all talking sustainability. And I think a year and a half or 2 years ago, I was in this very nice event where Norman Foster, engineer Norman Foster, who is one of the greatest architects, he's as famous as the stars, but he was sitting and he was talking about sustainability and the Apple building in estates and how they built the building around the forested areas. And the gentleman is talking about how he's building the residence of astronauts on the moon, and how he's building that to be sustainable with the environment of the moon. Unfortunately, that's not what we have in Egypt. We talk about sustainability, yet when you see projects being implemented, you see trees being killed, mountains being detonated, and that's the furthest thing away from sustainable architecture. So yes, the trend is sustainable architecture. No, we don't see it in Egypt at all at the moment. Hopefully, we will see it soon. It's understandable that we don't see it in Egypt because sustainable design needs time, and time is a pleasure that Egypt does not have at the moment and has not had in the past years. So it's very understandable that the time constraint and the need to build fast to resolve more important questions on the table at that time cause that we see things happen like bridges coming in instead of trees, you know. But it's still you can't say that there's no complete good solution or complete bad solution. Did it resolve traffic issues? Yes, for sure, 100%. You can't say no. Did it a little bit kill nature? Yes, it did. Did it have a negative effect on people, residents of the area? Yes, it did. But it's understandable. It had to happen. The idea is, or the question is, did it have to happen that way or not? Is it sustainable? No. Is it sustainable architecture? No. Is it sustainable design? No. Do we have anyone in Egypt at the moment that's pledging a promise for sustainable design? Not really. We don't see it in any codes. Hopefully, there is a hold on the building codes that was announced by His Excellency the Prime Minister, and we're still waiting to see if that will have any thing related to sustainability in the building codes or not. We'll see it. Hopefully, it does. But until something like this happens, I'm pretty sure developers will not do it on their own. We have seen one developer who has actually tapped into this, which is Minka. If you've heard of it, it's a new development by Abdullah Salem. And if you see the presentation, the gentleman is only talking sustainability. He's talking. He's actually creating nature in a place where it was not available at the time. So I hope all the best for him. He's a very smart gentleman. He's approaching people from in a very different angle, and he's going against the flow. And hopefully, the flow turns in his direction, not the other way around.
Yeah, hopefully. And what are the things that Namaa would like to avoid when it comes to the current architectural designs? Is there some trend that you're following? Is there some style that you have?
Difficult question. Our major problem in architectural design is cost related, which is a very boring discussion, I know. We have always built our buildings to meet the A-class client.
Yeah.
And the A-class client is shrinking. The B-class client, and when I say B, I only mean in size of company, not in the human sense. This is increasing. The startup field is increasing massively. We need to start to build our buildings in a way where we can actually use a single floor for 20, 30 tenants rather than using a single floor for one or two tenants maximum, because this is what we have in our buildings at the moment. And this is the thing we have resolved in Capital One project, is that our office spaces, we have a floor area of around 7,500 to 7,700 square meters per floor. And we have offices in the size of average 160 square meters. So it's a massive amount of offices. It's a challenge to get daylight in there, but we managed to do it thanks to Hazel Wong's efforts in designing the building. We have a lot of atriums there to bring in daylight into the offices from both sides. All offices have a view, and that was a challenge. And hopefully we've passed that architectural flaw. We built our buildings in a time where multinational, large corporation, large areas was the thing to do. So we built it for that. We have a little bit of challenge now, shrinking it down, but it's doable, and hopefully it's completely avoided in capital projects.
Yes, hopefully, inshallah. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
You're very
Yes,
welcome. Very happy to be with you.
yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.